We're going to current Daf Mesechta Bava Metzia Daf Mem Tes. We begin 12 lines down at the top of the Amud, where the Gemara continues with this machlekes from the previous Daf regarding how much do your monies acquire for you, which it's relative if it's karka or metatlin. Meaning our Perek Hazav was discussing metatlin. Perek Hazav kindness a kesef versus kesef not being kindness as Hazav, was discussing movable items because karka actually kesef would be kaina. We know karka is nicked bekesef, shtar bechazaka. So there's a difference between if you're buying karka or metatlan, but either one, for karka it's an actual kinyan, for metatlan it's a mishapara. If you back out, even though kesef is not a kinyan, but you're still going to get a curse of mishapara. Now there was machlekes Rav and Rabbi Yechanan, when someone gives money, how much of the down payment does it acquire of the object? Is it acquiring the whole thing? Or is it only acquiring what's called keneged mo'esav? So the Gemara just continues with Rav, his opinion regarding that we said that it's only kenegda hukaina, only correlating to the amount of the money, not to the entire amount of the object. It just goes back to throughout the entire world. So discussing today's daf are dvarim, just words. Words is a new category. We spoke about kinyan. We spoke about that when it's not a kinyan, it's still going to be a mishapara when money was given. Then, let's say no money was given, just words. So that's called mechusra amana. These are all halachic terminology that's still in practice. That it's considered lack of faithfulness. That's the question: is that would that apply just to words, or do we actually say that it's what we learn out from the Torah is a different concept of echad b'pev, echad b'leiv? That when you said something, you actually meant something else. And then there's a difference between matana meruba or matana mu'etes. Does a person really rely on what's happening when it's a large gift, or is it only by a small gift? Then we continue into halacha, the next Mishnah, which discusses the halacha of oina, which is that of fraud or overcharging or undercharging. So that of a shtus mekach is a sixth of the product if there's a price differential. Or actually, there's a machlekes if it's even shtus mois, namashlein, as we'll explain in the Gemara, if there's a price difference of a sixth in regards to the money, not of the object itself. So we begin the current daf Mem Tes, 12 lines down at the top of the Amud, where the Gemara brings a story, and it illustrates a halacha. Rav Kahana, Yavulei, they gave him, he was the seller, they gave him zuzi, money, akisna, for some linen. L'soifa yakar kisna, at the end, the linen went up in price. So the seller obviously didn't want to sell because he could get more money for it now. Classic situation. So also coming to Rav, he came in front of Rav. Now that's important that he came in front of Rav because there's going to be Rav l'shitasai, according to his opinion we mentioned in the previous stuff. Malay, Rav said to him, "B'maid nikita zuzi, for the amount of what you got money paid for this down payment of the silk. Okay, for that hablahu, that you have to give him. And if not, you have to accept the mishapara because the money was given. And you could back out, metallic is not a full kinyan, but you're going to get a mishapara for backing out. The idach, however, regarding the rest of the silk which he didn't give money for, dvarim nenu, that's just words without money, which Rav, according to his reasoning from the previous daf, said that you only are kinda correlating to the amount of money that was given. The rest you're not kinda, not even for mishapara, so it's just words. But dvarim, if you gave just words, that's not considered lacking of faithfulness, because it's actually machlekes Rav and Rabbi Yechanan. On another point, Devarim regarding words, Rav Ami says, that's not considered a lack of faithfulness. The fact that you said something and you back out, that's not considered a flaw. But Rabbi Yechanan says, no, yes, there is a problem about lacking faithfulness. So, no, it's a lower thing. It's a different, it's a related concept. It's actually, we're going to learn that in 1 second. Do we learn that out from a pasuk or not? This is what the Gemara is going to ask right now. But it's considered a lack of faithfulness, is like we learned the pasuk in Tzefania. So the Gemara says, Mesa. The Gemara asks on. So again, this is a double l'shitasi of Rav. Number one, that he holds that it's yomoi, so only kenegde kaina. So the rest is just dvarim. And then on dvarim, Rav holds also that there's no mechusei amana, so there's no problem. Go ahead and don't sell the rest of the silk because could you get more for your money now? But Meisvi, the Gemara says on Rav in the following brisa. Basically, Yehuda says, "Matam alema." What does it mean? The pasuk in the yikra. Actually, the pasuk here is talking about scales. That you should have righteous scales. righteous weights and appropriate measurements. And then the pasuk says, and you should have hin tzedek, which hin is really a measurement. The question is, hin b'chlal efa haya. The pasuk mentions the words efa tzedek, and then it says v'hin tzedek. As Rashi explains, a hin is 12 lug. A efa, which is 3 saw, is 72 lug. So if you're already mentioning the larger amount of the efa that it should be appropriate measurements, so a hin is already included in that. So why would the pasuk explicitly mention another type of a measurement that's already included in the efa? So the Gemara has an interesting, it's like almost like a chassid shepshat. Elamcha rather coming to tell you, shehei hen shalcha, your hen, meaning your yes, should be tzedek, should be righteous. V'lav shalcha tzedek, and you know should be righteous. In other words, when you're speaking, yes or no, fulfill your words and justify them. So it's not like hin as in the measurement. But hin, amazuk ya, this my tetaira as design tzedek should be righteous. But one thing is, you see that avart is avart. A word is a word. The Torah is telling you that you have to keep your words. So how could Rav say there's no problem about mechusar amana that you're lacking faithfulness? So Mabayi says no. The Torah when it says hin is not talking about this concept of what the Gemara is calling mechusar amana. Is teaching something else. What it's telling you is this person should not speak one with his mouth and one with his heart. Meaning, when he's saying his words, he should not have a mind to change what he's saying. That's echad b'peh v'echad b'leiv. At the time he's saying it, mitamol, he's saying something else with his heart. He's saying it outside, but inside he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's unfaithful. But if the market changed at a later point in time, and the bank says, well, I can make more money now, that's not considered chesar. It's not lack of faithfulness. I thought it was going to be this. It's going to be more now. I'm not following through on the sale. That's Machlekes Rav and Rabbi Yechanan. But the Gemara continues asking on Rav Meisveh in the following brisa. Shimon he says, although they said, this is which the opening halacha of our parak Hazav, the concept of talis koine din Hazav, when you do mashicha on the talis, which is the mekach, which is the object, you'll acquire the golden coin. But the ain din Hazav koine talis, as we said, because that's money. The golden coin acquire the talis, but mikam makam kach halacha. You're right, that's the halacha. But they said, this is the concept we said on the previous stuff. Whoever collected the punishment from the people of the generation of the flood and the people of the generation of the dispersion, who also is getting the punishing someone that does not stand by his word, which the Seifa over there teaches that if someone backs out in general, so obviously you see that there is a mechusar mana even with just words. So because what Rashi is explaining is because what do you bring a raya? This was talking about with money. Here we're talking just with words. So Rashi says yes, but the seifa of that teaches that even without money, just words itself. That's what you were pointing out. That's Rashi is comparing the two of them. Mechusar mana and enru chacham nachem. You see, it's considered a problem. So the Gemara Tanoi, it's a machlekes Tanoi, meaning the Gemara is going to quote now a Tana, Rabbi Yochanan ben Masya, who disagrees and would hold like Rab that it's not a problem. Because we learned the Mishnah later on the Pegim Lamed Aleph. The Mishnah says, Ma'aseh Rabbi Yochanan ben Masya sh'amar lebnai. He said to his son, Tzeva sachal lanu peilim. Go out, hire us workers. We need workers here to help us out for Pesach. Okay. Halacha pasuk lemezainis. So the son went and he designated for the workers a certain amount that they're gonna give them food when they're working. Now, when they came to his father, he said to him, B'ni, my son, even if you're gonna feed them the meal that Shlomo Melech would give when he was in his moment, when he was king, and he was the wealthiest man, you didn't fulfill your obligation with them. Why? Because they're princes. Every Jew that you hire is a prince. He's the son of Avram Mitzvah Yaakov. So you can't just tell them that we're going to feed them because they're going to expect who knows what, and we're obligated like that. Ella, rather, actually, quickly before they get started working, go out and tell them that it's only on Menashe in Lechem Alai, that only on condition that you only have on me this that I said we're going to feed you, is Ela Pas V'Kitn is Bulvad. It's just bread and some beans, and that's it. Meaning, as Rashi... Yeah, exactly. You have to be careful what you say, Meaning, as Rashi says, he told his son to back out of the condition before they start working to say, look, we're going to give you just a light meal, light refreshments being served. None of this. Don't expect you getting this like all these hot food and everything, this and that. Now, okay, that's the Mishnah we'll see later in the Pigimel. But the main thing is what the Gemara wants to take out of this. You're going to think to say that just words is considered as lacking faithfulness that we were asking on Rab. We said, look, the Tanoim, they hold not like you, Rab. We're going to show you that, no, this Tana holds like Rab. Because if you would think that words would be a problem about backing out, lacking faithfulness, how could the father tell his son, Zil Hadabach, go back out? You already gave them the word that you're going to give them food, which food means a 9-course meal. And so obviously the Tana holds like Rab. So Gemara actually rejects the raya. It's not a raya. Could be this Tana also does not hold like Rab. Shani Hasam there was different because the poilim gufayu lo samcha datayu. The workers themselves, they weren't so reliant, they weren't so confident on the words of the son. My time, what's the reason? Because maybe they know delavu samach that really they're dependent on the father. The son is just a schlepper for his father going to hire, but he's not the employer. And therefore, they weren't so confident, and therefore that's not considered as mechusri amana because they weren't really relying on his word anyway. So the Gemara says, wait, if that's the case, then why did the father say, make sure they didn't start working yet? Even if they started working, get still back out, because just what the son promised, the son's word is nothing. So the Gemara, no, had they started working, then they would have been reliant, and then there would have been considered lack of faithfulness to back out, because they would say, obviously if we started our job already, obviously he already told his father what he made up with us, and the father was pleased with it. So therefore, until they started working, that's not a problem about mechus emana, but could be in general, it would be a problem about mechus emana, and maybe not like Rav. But now the Gemara asks, now the Gemara is going back to the other man, Rabbi Yechanan. Did Rabbi Yechanan really say that with words itself, it's a problem about if you back out that it's mechus emana, it's lacking faithfulness? But Rabbi Yechanan himself is quoting the following halacha. If someone tells his friend, I'm giving you a gift. The halacha is yochel lachzeboy. He could back out. Now, we asked on this halacha, yochel, he could back out? Shita, of course he could back out. No mashiach was done. The courts can't come and say, the uncle told me you're giving him a gift? There was nothing done. Of course he could back out. So the Gemara says, no, Ella, rather, obviously, what Rabbi Yechanan must be saying is mutu lachzeboy, is that he's telling us that you're allowed to back out. There's not even considered a problem about mechus amana. There's no lack of faithfulness. Even though you gave him a word, you said, don't worry, I'll get you something nice. The fact that you said that says Rabbi Yechanan is no problem. Rabbi Yechanan, I thought you said that words are a problem. How does Rabbi Yechanan say that it's not a problem? So my papa says, because the Rabbi Yechanan agrees, b'matana mu'etes. He agrees by a small gift that's where you're not allowed to back out. Why? Because the samcha datayu. Because then the recipient is confident on the word that you're saying that you're going to give it to him. And therefore, that's the case Rabbi Yechanan is saying that you're not allowed to back out. When did he say you're allowed to back out? You said, I'm going to give him a huge gift. The guy's not confident you're going to give me. You're really going to give me? You're going to give me, you said you promised me a house, a car, or whatever. You're not going to give it to me. You tell him, you give it to him, I'm going to give you a slice of pizza. So the guy says, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't he give me a slice of pizza? Not a big thing. So mechus amana it's because I trust in you. I believed that you were going to do it. And now you backed out, that's mechus amana. But something I didn't trust in the first place, there's no mechus amana. And there's actually a big matana is when you can back out. A small one is Rabbi Yechanan, so it's not a contradiction. It depends if it's meruba or mu'etes. As Taisa says on the top, it's also yoker. Also, if price goes up, that's also considered as matana mu'etes, and therefore that's why you out, as we had mentioned previously, because it's something that a person is reliant that even if the price goes up, also that you're going to follow through. And the Gemara says, "Hachnam mistabra." It's logical to say what we're saying because the Amar Bavo Amar B'Yechanan, another teaching of Rabbi Yechanan, solidifies this idea. Yechanan said, "Yisrael she'amal ben Levi." If a non-Levi says to every Levi, is called a Ben Levi. He said to a regular Levi, Kur Meiser yesh lecha biyadi. You have by me a kur, which is a measurement of Meiser, meaning I already separated Meiser from my produce, and I'm going to give it to you, so you have it. But hostas b'mir. So Ben Levi to shoy la'asosei trumas Meiser. So the Levi is allowed to make the because what happens is a Levi has to separate a tenth of that tenth and give it to the kohen. Meiser min ha-meiser. It's called Trumas Meiser. So now, let's say Levi gets from everyone. He has all his good friends. They give him the. So that's what we're saying. Then it's his, and that's actually the point we're about to establish. It doesn't have to be kained. He said that it's his. He's giving it to him, so he can make it Trumas Meiser. Because let's say he has a bunch of Meiser, so he has to you know what? Oh, this guy promised me I have by him. It's written by him. I'll designate that as the Trumas Meiser. Says the Gemara, if you're going to say that he cannot back out, meaning, like we're saying, because of B'chosei Amana, that's why you're allowed to have the Levi designate what's by that Yisrael, his Meiser, as Trumas Meiser, because he can rely on what the pasuk says in Tzvanya, that because of Jewish people don't lie and they don't do wrong things, and he's not going to give it to another Levi. Now, this is a matana mo'etes. Why is it matana mo'etes? Because even if it's a large amount of meiser, the Yisrael does not have in the meiser but taibas hana. He doesn't. It's not monetary value to the Yisrael. It's not his. He can't use it. It's just who he gets to give it to that has a small monetary value. So he could have given to whichever Levi. That if I promise you I have it, I'll give it to you. That there's no reason for me not to believe you're not going to give it to me. So that's why the Levi could go ahead and say, okay, he's obviously going to give it to me. I could designate it as Trumas Meiser for all my other Meisers. But if you say, no, right, but the point is about the one, the giver, that it's a small gift, because then I'm confident you're going to give it to me. For me, it could be a huge gift, but for you, it's like, why wouldn't you give it to me? Of course, I'm relying on the fact that you'll keep your word. A big word, nah, I don't think you're going to do it. People always change their mind on big things. The small things, there's no reason for me not to believe. Now, that's only if you hold, like we were saying, that there's a chiluk between matana mu'etes. The mu'etes is that you cannot back out. But if you say that he could back out, amai rishai, then why is the Levi allowed to designate it? It might come out that he was eating tavel because his ma'aser that he was eating, because he thought he had Trumas Ma'aser somewhere else, and the guy ended up giving to another Levi, would be a problem. So the Gemara says, no, it's not a raya from this teaching. Because I can tell you, what are we talking about over here? Is going shenetoloi mimenu. The Levi actually took it from him, and he went and he deposited back by him. Which Taisa says the Gemara could have asked, "What's the chiddush?" The Mala Memra. Obviously, I mean that's obviously they can rely on it. But the Gemara asks, anyways, from the Seifa. He says the Gemara aim a Seifa. Then wait a second. Look at the Seifa. The Seifa of this brisa says, what happens if the son of Leben Levi Acher? What happens if Taki doesn't give it to this Levi? He gives it to a different Levi. He ends up meeting a different Mukubal Levi, and he's like, oh, this guy's going to give me bracha, this and that. He gives it to this other Levi. So, Ein Loi, the first Levi doesn't have olav on this Yisrael, Elatarumas, only complaints, because he promised, he guaranteed him, which was false hopes. So he could have complaints in them, but that's all he has in him. Now, if you're going to think to say, like you just answered me in the Reisha, like that, what do you mean the Levi had taken from him and redeposited by him? So why is there only complaints? Given the Mashke, once he drew it, it has a monetary claim on him. It was already his. Which is related to your question. You're asking, does he have to do a kinyan on it? We're saying that it seems like he doesn't have to. He designate Trumas Meiser, but when he does it, it's actually monetarily owned by him. So how could he only has taremis? So says Gemara, Elav Shmamina, rather obviously it must be Tumam B'Dulay Notly. Because or else the Sefer wouldn't make sense. He didn't take it. And it's just words. And that what you see Shmamina is that yes, with words there are Mechusra Amana, and that proves a point that we said for Rabbi Yechanan, that when there's a Matana Mo'etes, that's when Rabbi Yechanan says that it's going to be Mechusra Amana, it's going to be a lack of faithfulness. Now the Gemara brings a story. Hu Gavra. There's a person, the Ab Zuzi Ashumshmi. So this is related to the theme that we're talking about, where a guy gave money for a product, which is what we were talking about in the beginning of the daf, from the previous daf. So a guy gave some money for sesame seeds. Now, L'Saifa Yakar Shumshmi, at the end, the price of sesame seeds went up. So Hajbuhu. So the sellers backed out on him. They said to him, less than Shumshmi, we don't have sesame seeds. Shako Zuzach, take your money. The seller said, we don't have any more. Which obviously they had, but they don't want to sell it to him because the price went up. We don't have any more. Take your money back. Now, Lo Shako Zuzach, the buyer is stubborn. He didn't take his money back. Now, what I most igniv, So the seller's not taking responsibility. He's take your money back. He doesn't. He leaves it on the counter over there, and then it gets stolen. Also, coming to Rabbi, they came in front of the Rabbi. What's the psak halacha? Amalei said to him, to the buyer, since the seller said to you, shakal zuzach b'lei shaklis, they said, take your money, and you didn't take it. I don't have to say that the sellers weren't even paid custodians, because on some level you could say that there was some benefit that they had from the money. No, they weren't even unpaid custodians. And even if they were negligent with the watching it, they didn't do anything, they're going to be potter because they told you, take your money. And therefore, they had no responsibility whatsoever. However, Amali Rabban l'Rava, but the rabbi said to Rava, but the sellers have to accept. Remember, the sellers got the money already. Once you get the money, you could back out halachically, but you have to accept the curse of the mishapara. And as Rashi explains what the Gemara's question is, maybe the sellers don't want to accept that curse, and comes out that the money was really theirs. The mishapara is to be backing out of the sale. No. If you don't want to accept the mishapara, then you have to. Then the sale is done. Anything to do with the person that you say, I don't want to accept. Yeah, if he doesn't want to accept mishapara, then he has to. The sale is done. He has to go through with the sale. Exactly. So if the sale is done, that's exactly what Rashi says. It comes out that the money was the seller's already, and the seller lost the money, not the buyer lost the money. Yeah, you have to go to Bezdin, whatever it is. The guy wants to back out, you go to Bezdin, and you have this court case. Or the Rav, whatever. So he said to him, yeah, Chinami, you're right. Either the seller has to pay for the sesame seeds, or accept the Mishapara. You're right. That goes without saying. Now, Amr Papa, he actually says, this was the story as it was brought down. Rav Papa said, Amali Ravina said to me, that Ledidi Amali Hamli Rabbanan, that to me, one of the rabbis said to me, so it's Rav Papa saying over from Ravina, that one of the rabbis said to him, Rav Tvus Shmei, his name was Rav Tvus. Some say no, it wasn't Rav Tvus. Rav Shmuel Bar Zutra Shmei was his name. But be that as may, a person that said the Ihavel Yavale Kol Chalol Da'alma, if they would give him everything that's in the cavity of the world, meaning all the money of the world, he wouldn't change and deviate his word from the truth. However, he says actually that story with the sesame seeds happened with him, and the story that, as it was said over, was not true. That he says, had I accepted money to give sesame seeds, I would never have backed out for all the money in the world. And it was not for that we went to court. It was for a very different story. So he's saying, like a brisker Meiser says, you're getting it wrong. This is how it was. The story happened. It wasn't like this. That day, it was Erev Shabbos. By Yisivna, we were sitting. And someone came, a man came and knocked on the door. Amali said to me, do you have some sesame to sell? I need to have tonight, Friday night, some good sesame with honey or whatever. So he's continuing with bays. Amali, they said, no, sorry, there's no sesame seeds. Amali said to me, he says, do me a favor, let this money be a deposit by you. It's right before Shabbos. I thought I'm going to get some sesame seeds. I'm going to buy it to you. To me to get back home, I don't have enough time to get my money back home. Do me a favor. Bipekadin. Translate the word Bipekadin. Keep. Yeah, I'm saying it's the same thing. A deposit is to keep it over there. That's what a deposit is. No, I don't mean deposit as in, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean deposit in the other translation of the English word. As in, yeah, meaning to deposit means to put it. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, exactly. Not because we were speaking about a ravan as a deposit, exactly. Right. So the chashchili, because it's dark. Somebody says, look, habesa kamach. The house is in front of you. It's an open house. So he put in the house, Vignev was stolen. That's the story. So Asla Kamid Rava, which Teis on the Manalf explains that this must be going according to a specific mandam we had in Baba Kama that holds that when you say such a terminology, you're not accepting responsibility. So that's the story. On that Asla Kamid Rava came in from the Rava, and Amalei said to him that Kol Ha Beisa Kamach, any situation of like here the house is open in front of you, to say that you're not going to be a shemesachar, that even a shemechinam you're not going to be. He didn't accept any responsibility by saying, "Hey, look, the house is open. Do whatever you want." But I'm not your shomer. On that Amrlei, but so Ravina said that Amrlei, they said to him, to this one of the rabbis who had said over this story, So how could you say that the story wasn't about backing out from a sale, as we originally said the story? But for Amalei Rabban LaRava, didn't the rabbi say to Rabbi, doesn't the story go that he boiled the kibbutz lemishabara that has accepted upon himself a mishapara? If, according to your version of the story, there's no mishapara over here. It's just about liability. Amalei said to me, no, that never happened. Lahadam. People add on to stories and it becomes this like a whole version that's going around the WhatsApp and whatever, and never happened. So he says that this was not the story. The story was like this, and he clarified. And again, it had nothing to do with this mishapara, but that was the story about if he's like a shemachinam or not. Now we have in the Mishnah that the second opinion, Rabbi Shloimy, he said that this halacha of that by mo'is, that by money, that you could back out, although there's a mishapara, the Tanakama said everyone could back out, the seller or the buyer. Shloimy says no. Kol shakesa b'yadai. Whoever that has the money by him, which was the seller, yadel yoyna, he has the upper hand. He could back out, but not the buyer. So actually, the Gemara brings a brayso Tanya that elaborates on this halacha. He says imasa. Says when did we say that if only money was given that you could still back out? Bizman shah kesef ha'peres biyad meicher is when the money and the product and the peres are in the hand of the seller. Well, the seller could back out because the rabbis made it in his possession, as we had said in the previous stuff, so that he should put in the effort to try to save it, because if it goes up, he'll get the increase, so he'll try to sell it. He'll try to save it, to salvage it. But if the money is in the hand of the seller, and the produce is in the hand of the buyer, then the seller cannot back out. Because the money is in his hand. The way it sounds like that the buyer already got his money, which the Gemara asks, biyadai, in his hand of the buyer, biyad meichehu, and the money is in the hand of the seller. So says the Gemara, you're right. It just means because the monetary value of his money, which is the product, is biyadai, is in his hand, in the hand of the buyer. So since the buyer has the product, the seller can't back out. Zimar says pshita, obvious. That's meshicha. Even the Rabbanan agree. What does that have to do with Reb Shimon? If the product was already taken, so then the sale is done. So Amar Rabbi says, what are we talking about over here? Is an interesting case. We're talking about talking about the upper story of the buyer was actually muskeres biad meicher. The lease that the seller had was in this buyer's property, and the produce was in the possession of the lekeach, essentially. And as Rashi explains in the Vimas Maskeres, it's not that his chatzar was going to acquire for him with the giving of his money, because it's in my property, it's on my third floor. No, because since he gets paid rent, so obviously the place is the acquisition of the seller for during the time period of the lease. It's the chatzar, the meicher. Although it's in the property of the seller, of the buyer, it's not considered his chatzar. Rather, it's for a very different reason. Reb Shimon, as we established on Daf Mem Zayin Mebeis, holds that mois koin is dvar Torah. From a biblical standpoint, he holds like Rabbi Yechanan that money acquires from biblical halacha. Meshicha is only takan rabbanan. Here we don't need the takan rabbanan meshicha. Why? So the Gemara explains. Time amai. What's the reason that the kin rabbanan meshicha, that the rabbanan instituted meshicha? What's the Gezerah, like we had mentioned, is the decree because maybe the seller is going to tell him, look, sorry, buddy, you paid already, it's yours. It was still in my attic, it got burnt, and he's not going to bother saving it because it's not his, and it's not such an upstanding individual. So if we said that no, it's not the buyer's yet, it's still considered the seller's. Here, it's not a problem because it actually is upstairs from the buyer. Enough if a fire happens to get and the building catches on fire, he's going to put in the effort and he's going to go and bring it, and therefore that's the chiddush that is going to acquire even without Mashiach, because we don't have the concern. That it's a very pragmatic concern. We don't have it over here. In this case, where it's the buyer's property and the seller just like rents out his room on the top floor, he's going to save it, and therefore it's going to be acquired just with money, and you don't need to have Mashiach. Like Gemara brings a story regarding this concept about backing out of that's why actually we created Mashiach. Because of we wanted the seller to save it. So who gathered the Yov Zuzi Achamra? There was a person who gave money for a donkey. It's wine? Okay, so sometimes it's always hard to know if it's wine or donkey. On wine. L'seif shama de kaboy lemitzvah de bei parzik. So he at the end he heard that the Bey Parzik is the household of the governor, that they wanted to take it refila, meaning that was the Mishnah Lamelech, like the second in command, wanted to confiscate the wine. So Malay, so he said to the seller, Havli Zuzi, you know what? Give me my money back. I don't need wine. So also coming to Rav Chizdi, came in front of Rav Chizdi. Amalei says yes. And this is the halacha of Rav Chizdi that we wanted to say, that's the machlekes in the Tanoim that we mentioned in our Mishnah, if between Reb Shimon and the Tanakama, which the Tanakama says that even the Lekeach can back out, and Reb Shimon said only the Meicher. So the Gemara wanted to say that this is this halacha that they disagree about. Rav Chizda says, and just like they instituted that the seller could back out as long as the buyer did not do Mashiach yet, so do they instituted that the same thing is for the buyer, that the buyer could also back out as long as Mashiach wasn't done. And we said that will reinforce the concept that for sure the seller is going to try to save, because if the buyer could back out, then he'll never be worried if something's going to happen to it. Like over here, he sees a fire is happening, or he sees that the government is trying to take it, he'll definitely go in and try to save it. So yeah, the guy's allowed to go ahead and back out. It could be Misha Para, but the guy's allowed to back out, not just the seller, but also the buyer. Now we continue with halacha. The next Mishnah, continuing regarding distortions in the sale, which we spoke about previously, the Mishapara, Mechusar Mana, and Einru Chacham Noichemena. Now we continue with another perversion of the monetary acquisition, which is the halacha of Hoina. Hoina is unfair pricing. And just like we have Hoina is Devarim, is unfair words. So we have also in monetary acquisitions is unfair pricing. What is considered Hoina, which the Torah speaks about, the person Leisainu, the person is not to go ahead and do unfair pricing, is Arba. It's 4 ma'ah of kesef, which have 6 of them in a dinner, me'esrim va'arba kesef lesela, from 24 of the ma'is, which is a sela. So if let's say the purchased item was the value of a sela, it sounds a little confusing. It's only because we're introducing other type of currency. It's really a simple idea. A sela is 24 ma'as. So now the Oina is going to be 4 ma'ah out of the 24, which is a shtus lamekach, a sixth of the product. That's what the unfair pricing would be. And then he would have to give him back all of that Oina, which would be the 4 kesef. So again, if the product was 24 and there was an unfair deviation of 4 coins, that's a sixth of the price. So you would have to give back those 4 ma'is that were over or undercharged, as we'll see. Now, says the Mishnah, Ad Masai Motil Hachzer, until how long is the guy who got defrauded permitted to back out? Now, it says Rashi, why are we saying a terminology of mutter? That's coming to tell us that there's not even a mishapara, that's where it relates to the previous Mishnah, of to give back the purchased product, or that he should get his money back. Like we say, well, a deal is a deal, we gave money and whatever. It says, yes, here it's different because there was a price differential and that was overcharged. So until how long is it actually permitted to back out? So it says the Mishnah, Ad Kadei Shiyura, up until that the purchased item will be shown the tager to a merchant or the krever to his relative, meaning he doesn't know he got how much you paid for that? He charged you what? How much? You go back right now and you get your money back. So if he delayed more than that, obviously he's moichel on the overpricing. But you give him the amount of time that he would show it to someone and then he would realize, hey, I got ripped off, and he's going back to get his money back. Now, Hay Reb Tarfon Balud. Now, however, Reb Tarfon, who is in Lud, he instructed that actually Hayna is actually a different type of a ratio. It's Shmoina Kesef, Me'eser Be'arba Kesef L'Sala. It's 8 out of 24. This is where all the math teachers show to their students, see, you have to know how to understand this calculation, right? This is 8 out of the 24. Yankala, how much? What's the shlish lemekach? So it's a third of the purchased price, which is a huge difference. He's making mekach toys. He's making oina instead of a sixth. He's making into a third, only a third, which is a huge amount of a price difference. And v'samchu tagari lud. So all the merchants of Lud were rejoicing. They were dancing in the streets because they were well versed in business, and they said we could sell for a much higher price increase. We could charge up to a third more. But the story doesn't end. He said to them, but kala yomut, a guy could come back, even though he bought it at 9 o'clock in the morning, and you're closing your shop at 5 o'clock. At 4:30, he could come running back. He says, I want my money back because you guys overcharged me. He could come back all day. So Amrullah, they said to him, we're going to leave Reb Tarfon in our place. They went back to the words of the Chacham. Because remember, and the Gemara is going to explain this in great detail, but the Chachamim had said, until he gets home and his wife screams at him, it says, you paid what? And she sends him back. That's maybe an hour or two later, which actually Taisus says, the top Taisus says that's a mud nazach. The amount of time you show to a merchant or to a relative. If a guy's a loner, so he gets a few weeks, and if a guy has like a whole big family and his grandmother's there, it takes him a few minutes till he gets screamed at. So every person depends how long it takes for him to show a merchant relative. Says Taisus, no, it was one shiur. What's normal, how long it takes, to normally show a merchant or a relative, it doesn't make a difference how far or close his relatives are. It's a certain amount of time. Let's say it was an hour. Let's say till a guy got home or whatever. That's how long he gets to get back to the store and get his money back. But according to Reb Tarfon, he says all day. He says all day, forget about it. It's not worth it. We're going back to the Chachamim. We're going to do only up until 6th, but it's only till how long you show to the merchant versus Reb Tarfon, who gave you up till 3rd, but he said the guy could back out all day. Now, the Gemara brings a machlekes amiram, how to qualify the shtus, which is where the terminology shtus comes from, which is this unfairness that means a 6th. So we learned like this. Rav Amma, he says, shtus mekach shaninu, meaning it's specifically, of course, what we said in the Mishnah, but our Mishnah was specifically talking about a 6th of the merchandise, meaning if the oina was a 6th of the value of the item, that's oina. But if it was more or less, even though it might be a 6th of the monies that the guy gave, that would not be considered as a shtus, as a 6th, to have the halacha of oina. Now, what Rashi just explains to us, he says that if it's a 6th, exactly a 6th overcharge or undercharge, the sale is valid. None of them could back out, but that money has to be given back. But if it's, let's say, less than a 6th, so that's mechila, and he doesn't have to give back anything. If it's more than a 6th, both of them back out, even if he wants to give him back the oina that he overcharged him. Both of them have the permission to back out, and that's how the Gemara explains on the next daf, on daf nun base. But Rav says we're only talking about a 6th of the item. Now, Shmuel Amar, shtus mois namishaninu. We're also talking about even a 6th of a overcharge of the monies. Meaning, when the Mishnah said that a shtus lemekach was not necessarily only saying a 6th of the product, rather any the whole stipulation is considered the mekach, and that applies whether to the money that was given or to the value of the object. Meaning, anytime you could find any shtus, any 6th of oina, whether from the monies, as we'll explain in a moment what this means, or whether from the object, that will qualify as oina, and therefore it won't be mechila because it's not less than a 6th, and it won't be bittul mekach, which would make it more than a 6th. And now the Gemara is going to explain what their machlekes is. So first, the Gemara explains what everyone agrees to. Says the Gemara that shavi shita bechamisha. If let's say you have something that is worth 6, but it was sold for 5. Now, who lost out on that? The seller. The seller undersold it, or let's say shavi shita b'shiva. let's say it's something worth 6 and was sold for 7. Who lost out over here? The buyer. The buyer overpaid. So regarding these two cases, Kuli Alma, Eben agrees, both Rav and Shmuel, Loi Pliga, they don't disagree, the Basa Mekach Hazinan, we're going to go based on the purchased item. And this was a no, because it was a sixth of the purchased item. Because if you just contemplate it for a second, just to make sure you're getting it, if you have an item worth 6 coins and it was sold for 5, the seller was shortchanged by 1 coin. But just to keep it simple, by 1 coin, which is a sixth of the item's value. Or let's take the other case. If you have something that's worth 6 and it was sold for 7, the buyer was shortchanged by 1 coin, which is a sixth of the product. That's very important, just critical, just to get the basic understanding what the Gemara is saying. It's a shtus of the mekach, of the purchased item, a sixth of a difference. As Rashi explained, Shmuel also agrees to the halacha of shtus mekach. It's just that he holds it also applies to shtus mais, as we'll explain in one moment. But Eben agrees when it's a sixth of the product, that over or undercharging is going to make it into the halacha of oina. Okay. Now, however, keep ligi, what's their machlekes? Is shavi chamisha beshita. When you have something that's worth 5 and was sold for 6. Now, this case is interesting because the buyer overpaid a zuz, which was a fifth of, just you have to get it, it's a very simple idea, it could seem hard, which is a fifth of the product. Look at the case that we have here on the slide, right? You have an item worth 5 coins, and he paid him an extra coin. If you looked at the product, you're paying more than a sixth. But regarding the money that he gave, if you qualified from the money, it's a sixth money. Which Tais actually asks, isn't this what's called milagav, milavar? Tais says, no, whatever. But if you look at it from the money, it's a sixth of the money, which is what he was overpaying. Or another case. Let's take Rishavi Shiva Beshita. Let's say something that was worth 7, and it was sold instead for 6. Who lost out? The seller. The seller undersold it by a zuz. Now, regarding the item, as this other part of the slide shows, there's no shtus. It's not a sixth. It's a seventh. The item is worth 7 coins. It was sold for 6. That's a seventh. That's less than a shtus. Regarding the money, however, it is a shtus because it's 6 that was paid for that. The difference, if you look at it from the money, is a sixth. So it depends on what is the focus, if it's the money or if it's the product, could change it into a shtus. So Rav holds, no, those two cases are not qualified as shtus. It's not going to have the halacha of oina. It's going to have a different halacha based on the product, which Rashi already explained to us, which the Gemara is going to mention in a second, has a different halacha. Now, says the Gemara, but l'Shmuel, the Amabasa Moy says Lina, and according to Shmuel, that he says, we also go based on the money. Idi v'idi. Either case, whether it's something worth 7 sold for 6, or whether it's something worth 5 that's sold for 6, which again is for the seller or the buyer, that would be considered as Aina. It would be exactly this halacha of a sixth. So the Gemara explains now. According to Rav, that says, no, we only go based on the product. So it comes out that Shavi Chamsha Beshita, the case of when you sold something that was worth 5 and it said it was sold for 6, Bittel Mekachavir. That's more than that's charging more than a 6. It's actually a fifth of the value of the item. That nullifies the sale. Everyone just backs out. The money's given back. It's not. It's void. Shavishita b'shita. And the other way, something that's worth 7 that was sold for 6 is actually mechilahav. It's pardoning because it's only a seventh. That's not so much of an overcharge, of an undercharge. So therefore, it's mechila. Now Shmuel, however, he says, when do we say pardoning or nullification of the sale? That's heichad like a shtus. That's when you don't have a sixth from one of the mishnei tzadim, from one of two angles. That it's not a sixth, not from the product and not from the money. But where there is a shtus from even one angle of either the product or the money, which says that we generally look at the mekach. But if it's not, we're going to look at the money. Then I know havya. Then it's going to be considered as oina. That's the machlekes Rav and Shmuel on shtus mois. A simple concept. You just have to make sure that you get that angle that the Gemara is describing. Now the Gemara, however, asked Tanan. The Gemara asked from our Mishnah. It sounds like Shmuel, the way the Gemara at least explains it. The Mishnah said hoina. We opened up the Mishnah and said, what's hoina? What's the when you have unfair pricing? Is daled kesef me'esrim v'abar kesef l'sela. When the item was a sela, and which is 24 mois, and the guy was off by 4 kesef. That's a shtus lamekach. That's a sixth of the product. That's enough. So the Gemara assumes my love isn't it talking about the shavin shavi esrim. That what happened was that something that was worth 20 was sold for be'esrim va'arba. This is the way the Gemara is explaining it. Was sold for 24. Now that means that the buyer overpaid for the 4 coins. Now the problem is that is a fifth of the product. Because if the product was 20, 4 coins is a fifth of 20. But yet you're calling it oina and not bittul mekach. Ooh, shma mina, what you see from this is because shtus mois namishaninu. Because it's a sixth of the money. So that's like any math teacher could show them that there's 5 is a 4 is a fifth of 20, but 4 is a sixth of 24. So if you're looking at the monies, then it's a sixth. If you're looking at the product, then it's a fifth. So you see that our Mishnah is considering as a no, sounds like Shmuel. There we go, even if it's not a sixth of the product, but as long as it's a sixth of the money, it'll be considered as a no. So no, it's not the case. The case is actually the Zavin Shabi Esrim Ba'aba, that what happened was actually was worth 24, and it was sold for be'esrim, which actually it was undersold, and that's a sixth of the mekach actually, because the mekach was worth 24, and therefore it was a sixth undersold for 20. That's why it's going to be considered as halacha b'na. Then the Gemara jumps in and says, wait a second, minas ana meicher? Is there such a halacha of aina on the seller? Meaning, you tell me that the Mishnah was describing a case of where the seller got the sixth is aina. Now the problem is you're describing now a case that instead of, because it didn't make sense 20 over 24, that would have been the sixth of the mois like Shmuel. You didn't want to prove like Shmuel. So you say no, it's really something that was 24 sold for 20, so it was undersold. So you tell me that's aina, meaning that what? That the seller got defrauded and that the seller could back out. The Gemara says, but there is no such halacha. Because aim is seifa. Look at the seifa of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, until when could the one who got frauded back out? We said as long as he could show it to his merchant or his relative, that's the time limit. Now, Rav Nachman, he said, Loishan, we didn't learn that you only get the amount of time of showing it to your relative and nothing more. That's elulakech. That's only the buyer. Aval meicher. But if let's say the seller got defrauded, la'olam chayzer, you could always back out. He undersold it. So now yeah, anyone. It's you have two parties. Everyone's party to this. It was a mistake. So I'm saying in the shuk, this guy thinks this guy thinks that. The seller and the buyer, they're on equal standing. Now, the Gemara later on Daf Nun Alpha is going to explain the reason for this halacha. But one thing is, how could you explain our Mishnah as describing the seller, but the Mishnah itself qualifies when could you back out up until when you show it to the Tagar. If it was the seller, that wouldn't be a correct qualification. Obviously, our Mishnah is not talking about a seller. It's about a buyer. Then you're back to the question. It sounds like Shmuel, not like Rav. So the Gemara says, you're right. Ella, rather, I'll describe you the case a different way. The case is actually the Zavin Shavi Esrim Ba'arba. The item is worth 24, but it was sold for Be'esrim B'tamanya. It was sold for 28. So now 4 coins is a sixth of the mekach. And yes, it was the buyer who had overpaid by a sixth because it wasn't 20 instead of 24. Meaning it wasn't that what was worth 20 was sold for 24. It was something that was worth 24 that was sold for 28. So it's just important to keep your basic mathematics. Then you'll get a shtus of the mekach. Instead of 20 for 24, that's only going to be shtus of the mois. So therefore it's not a raya to Shmuel. But the Gemara continues trying to bring a raya. It's not from our Mishnah like Shmuel. Mishnah said that Hoyre Reb Tarfon belud. Reb Tarfon had instructed in Lud Hoyna that the price unfair pricing is shmeina kesef was 8 coins me'esem ba'ba kesef l'sela from 24 coins, which is a sela, which is a shlish lemekach. He held that it's not a shtus, it's a shlish. Instead of a 6, he said that the unfair pricing is only if it's as way up as a third. Now, says the Gemara Mailav, isn't the case talking about, which Tosfos asks, it says that what is this question seems to be the same thing we asked from the Reisha, but for some reason the Gemara asks it. Isn't it talking about the Zavin Shavi Shitzida? Isn't it something that's worth 16 and it's being sold instead B'Esrim Ba'arba for 24, which B'Shema Minas, obviously you see Shlish Mois Namishaninu. That's a third of the money because that's what, the 8 coin difference of 24 is because 8 times 3 is 24, and a third is going to see that it was sold something that's worth 16, and instead they got paid 24. So one thing is, but that's only a third of the money. That's not a third of the product. What's a third of 16 is not 8. It's only a third of 24. So Gemara, no, it's not the case. The case is the Zavin Shavi Esrim Ba'aba B'Shitzer. No, it's something that was worth 24 and was undersold for 16. That difference of 8 is a third of the Mekach because it was 24. Says Gemara, Minasana Meicher? What do you mean? Are you describing the case where the seller was defrauded in our Mishnah? But Amos Sefer, look at the Sefer. It says, Amalahem, he said to them, he said, all day, this is where Tarfon, he said, Nalik the Chacham, that you can only back out as long as you show it to the relative. You could back out all day. He says, this halacha was only said regarding the buyer. Of a Meicher, the seller, you could always back out. So obviously our Mishnah is not going on the case of the seller, because the qualification of Kol Yaim is only for the buyer. So obviously, we're talking about the case of the buyer. So rather says the Gemara, no, it's the Zavin Shabichav Dal. We're talking about where, yes, he bought something worth 24, but lost in the train for 32. So then the 8 is a third of the 24, and therefore it is a shlish of the Mekach and not of the Mois. Says the Gemara, Tanya Kavasei, the Shmuel. We have a brayso that says like Shmuel that the truth is it's whether a sixth of the item or whether a sixth of the money. Because the brayso says like this: Misha Hutul, whoever had that it was placed that the Ainah, that the unfair pricing was alav, meaning he was the one that was defrauded. So Yadei Al Yonah, he has the upper hand. So Kate said, what does that mean? So this is very important. The first case is the critical case that's going to show you like Shmuel. If he sold him something worth 5, and he sold to him for 6, Minasana, who was the one that had Ainah done to him? It was Lekech, because he overpaid. So that means the buyer has the upper hand. What does it mean he has the upper hand? If he wants, he can say, give me my money back. Meaning, I want to avoid the sale. Or he could say, no, give me what the Ainah was. Give me back that difference. Now, let's say he sells him Shava Sheish B'Chamesh. Let's say it was the other way around. Something that's worth 6 was sold for 5, which is a sixth of the product. Minasana, who's getting unfair priced? Meicher, the seller's losing out. So you had Meicher El Yonah. So the seller has the upper hand. If you want to say, give me my product back. Or tell me or give me what I was unfair priced that I undersold it to you. But one thing is, the first case was Shava Chamesh B'Sheish. Something that's worth 5 coins was sold for 6, and the Bryce is quoting that as a case of a shtus. That's not a shtus of the Mekach. That's a shtus of only the Ma'is. And so the Bryce counts it as a case of a Ainah, and therefore you see a Bryce that says like Shmuel taking to any time posting us.